Hello Bookish friends. As most of you already know, I read in many different genres. And in this top 5 video, I will talk about my favorite 5 genres, my favorite and least favorite subgenres, and again my favorite and least favorite tropes within that genre. The first genre that I'm going to talk about is science fiction. It takes the 5th place. I actually enjoy science fiction a lot more when watching movies and TV series. Although I do not read as much as other genres, I really enjoyed the science fiction books that I read. I actually had to research the subgenres for science fiction. And among those, I think my favorite subgenre is social science fiction and dystopia. I really enjoy dystopian science fiction that gives a social commentary, such as 1984 by George Orwell or The Handmaid's Tale. I really enjoyed those stories. My least favorite subgenre is hardcore science fiction. As an architect, I'm a semi-technical person, but I really do not like books that gives too much technical details, and hardcore science fiction does that. It is my least favorite subgenre of science fiction. My favorite trope among science fiction is my favorite trope of all the books, I think. It's time travel. I really adore time travel since I watched Back to the Future movies. And I like time travel in any other genre as well, in romance, in fantasy and mystery. But it is actually a plot device for science fiction, so I'm counting this as my favorite science fiction trope. Another trope that I really enjoy in science fiction is the parallel universes trope. I really enjoy that trope because, it helps me to think about the alternatives and what could have happened if we had not made that specific choice. So it's a really interesting concept to think about. My least favorite trope is space pirates. I really do not like pirate stories unless the pirates are the bad guys. I know some people do love pirates as their heroes. I really do not like books that romanticizes the concept of pirating. It's a pet peeve of mine, so I really try to avoid books that have space pirates as their hero or heroine. The fourth genre that I'm going to talk about is a new favorite of mine. It's fantasy. I started reading fantasy about 3 years ago, and I really enjoyed the works that I read so far. My favorite subgenre is epic adult fantasy with complex world buildings and complex characters. The most recent work that I have read is the series that I finished, Mistborn series of Brandon Sanderson. I really enjoyed that series, and I'm eager to try and get into new complex worlds and fantasy worlds. My least favorite subgenre is magical realism. There are some magical realism books that I like, but I struggle with the idea of stories that are set in our world and do not follow the rules of our world. If they explain the reason that why they could break the rules of our world, then I'm fine with it. But if they do not explain it and it is vague, I really struggle with that concept. I will try more magical realism works, but it is my least favorite genre of fantasy so far. My favorite trope in fantasy genre is the older wizard or mentor trope, and I really enjoy it when there is no romance between them, and it is purely based on being their older and wiser mentor. My least favorite trope in fantasy genre is overly religious settings. I mean, especially Christian settings. Some books assume that we know the rules of Christian settings in the books, mostly in fantasy books. But not being a Christian, I struggle to understand the plot and the story. And as you can guess from my previous answers, I need to understand what happens in a literary work. So, over the religious settings is my least favorite trope in fantasy genre. The third genre that I like the most is romance genre. It used to be my favorite genre once when I was a teenager. And I really did not fall out of love from that genre. But I like two other genres much more than romance right now. My favorite subgenre has always been historical romance when I was a teenager as well. They're fun, most of the time sexy, and I think they're like fairy tales in general. My least favorite subgenre is actually a subgenre that I have not read many works from. I had to put something for my least favorite subgenre since I'm doing this top 5 lists. So I chose paranormal YA romance. I actually did not read very much work about that subgenre, but I watched some movies and TV series regarding that subgenre, and I really did not enjoy any of them. So I say it with a caution that I did not read many books from that genre. My least favorite subgenre of romance is paranormal YA romance. As for tropes in romance genre, I have many ideas about that thing. I really enjoy fake dating and fake marriage trope. My favorite romance books and romance movies have that trope, and it is closely followed by enemies to lovers trope. I need to clarify something about that trope. I like a light banter between the characters. When it's something like hate to love, I do not like it as much because when you hate someone, you can be really hurtful to somebody, and if especially the hero or sometimes the heroine is very mean and does very cruel things to the other partner, I think there are some things that cannot be forgiven. So I prefer to call that trope something like rivals or light enemies to lovers. I don't know how you feel about it, but that's my take on enemies to lovers trope. My least favorite trope is also very significant: love triangles. There are some love triangles that are done very well, but generally I do not enjoy love triangles because there's a clear favorite in every one of them. So I think it's not very exciting to read about love triangle. And there is another trope that I do not like in romance, and that is love at first sight. I can understand the attraction at first sight, or maybe lust at first sight. In my opinion, you cannot fall in love with somebody just by seeing them for 2 dates or sometimes in a night. I do not think that is love. So we're coming to my 2 distinctive favorite genres. I really struggled with which to choose first. But right now, my second favorite genre is mystery. Favorite subgenre is not also very surprising, detective. I really enjoy, especially Agatha Christie's works, but I also enjoy many detective procedural books. And this is the only genre that I consider myself a bit picky, because I have read many very good works from classical time, and sometimes modern works do not satisfy me as much. but still it is my favorite subgenre of mystery. As for my least favorite subgenre, I'm going to say paranormal again, because I do not choose to read paranormal mysteries. So that's what I'm going to say again, but with a caution, like the paranormal romance subgenre, because I do not tend to choose them. Maybe if I choose a really good work, maybe I would be a fan of that genre as well. But right now, it is my least favorite subgenre. My favorite trope is being clueless, meaning that you do not know what happens, and you try to solve the mystery with the hero or the heroine, and the story is told from a first person point of view, the view of the hero or the heroine. And second trope that I like in mystery is amnesia trope. It's very similar to being clueless, because you do not remember, because the hero does not remember what happens, and you try to find out what happens again with the hero or heroine. So I think they are very similar, but one is caused by medical condition, and the other one is caused by not being familiar to the environment or the people. My least favorite trope in mystery genre is the butler did it. I mean, I found it in the internet, and when I read it, I understood it perfectly what they meant. In this trope, all the clues to solve the mystery are not given to the reader, and you are left shocked by, wow, I did not think that this person had done it. Unfortunately, my favorite author, Agatha Christie, sometimes did that in some of her works, in later works, most probably. And those works are my least favorite works among her novels. So, we are coming to my favorite genre, which is historical fiction, of course. I like historical fiction so much. See my TBR, and how much of it consists of historical fiction series. I like period dramas in TV and in the movies. I like the fact that when studying history, you can learn from mistakes and try to apply them to our contemporary world. So I think we can learn from historical fiction. And that is the reason why I enjoy historical fiction so much. My favorite subgenre of historical fiction is historical biographies or historical mysteries. These biographies do not have to be the biographies of very famous people or the people who influence the world's history, like Philippa Gregory books. They can also follow an ordinary people's lives and tell their life story in a certain period of time. And historical mysteries, of course, being a fan of mystery, it's no surprise that I prefer historical mysteries much more than any other subgenre of historical fiction. My least favorite historical subgenre is the Western historical stories. There are a few books that are considered Western that I enjoyed, like The Lonesome Dove. Really not that interested in the frontier period and the lives of cowboys in that time period. So it's my least favorite subgenre of historical fiction. My favorite trope of historical fiction is dual narratives, meaning that there are two timelines in the story. This trope is mostly used for historical mysteries, but sometimes when a character is telling his or her life story, this dual narrative is also used, and I really enjoy that because it helps the characters to analyze their past as well with that trope. My least favorite trope in historical fiction is that when the main character thinks like a contemporary person. I think there should be a limit to a character's forward way of thinking. Of course, there are some people in history who had thought outside of their society, but I think everybody is affected by their culture and the time period that they live in, more or less. But in some historical fiction books, the hero or the heroine acts so against the way of thinking of that time period. The story becomes unbelievable. So I think the main character in a historical fiction novel should be interesting, but most importantly, believable. So that was a very interesting discussion about my top 5 genres and what I like and didn't like about them. Please comment down below what are your favorite genres, subgenres, and what tropes you like in those genres. And what do you think about my preferences? Or anything you want. And as usual, please like and subscribe. Hope to see you very soon. Bye. As for Turkish word of the day, since my favorite genre is historical fiction, I think the word of the day should be history. History means tarih in Turkish, and tarih is our Turkish word of the day. Have a good day.